Okay, now this is a slightly different version of the blue-green patina I did the other day. Obviously no blue in this. I just went straight green over copper. But I wanted to show a little trick that I use sometimes for when you're uh, getting your patina and then you really want to come back and add some accents of just straight copper. So say we're at this point, we've got green all over. Now we want to bring back some of that copper. Now we can't sand this, unfortunately, and bring the copper back. If we do that, we'll wind up just stripping that right off. So real important here, what we have to do is cheat that look by putting the copper over the top. So what we're going to do first, if we add that copper right now, we could dry brush that on, it would look beautiful, but the problem is since I have not sealed this patina, that green oxide is still reacting. So that green is going to start reacting with the back of that copper paint and working its way up through it. And it'll look beautiful at first, but then over time it's going to start looking kind of muddy and not as coppery. So to prevent that, what we're going to do is we're going to seal this. I'm going to use some of the matte clear guard. We're going to seal this piece, and then we're going to put our accents over the top of that sealer. But real important to seal this and let that dry, and then go back on top with more of our copper bead. Now the clear guard matte, remember this has a matting agent in it that has to be suspended, so make sure you shake that up really good. Also on this, real important to understand that unlike just a regular clear sealer, this is both a corrosion resistant sealer as well as a UV blocker. So we will prevent corrosion as well as damage from UV. And that is really important with a piece like this because we have corrosion. We've deliberately created an oxide on the surface. And left unchecked, that oxide will just run amok. So we want to make sure we lock that in where we like it, seal that up really good to prevent that from spreading. Now this is a solvent-based clear, so this is a clear lacquer with a solvent, so I want to make sure that I put on a respirator before I spray this. You could do this outside, just make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. Okay, now we've got our clear sealer applied, and it's going to take a little bit for that color to return. As you probably noticed there, as soon as I start hitting that with the clear guard, you start seeing more of the copper show through. And that's completely normal. That's the clear guard saturating that oxide and grabbing onto that copper underneath. So once that solvent evaporates off, our color will return to what it was, and then we're ready to proceed. But important to remember that as soon as you start spraying that on, you're going to see some color change, and that's okay. As soon as that dries out, your patina color will return. But as I've stated in other videos, real important if you're new to this process, have a piece of foam core, a piece of drywall, a scrap piece of wood, something that you can do some finish tests just to see how everything is going to look, because doing traditional patinas like this that create real oxides is a very organic process, totally different than painting. So there's a lot of factors we have to take into account, like the weather, the temperature, humidity, all those things will ultimately determine the kind of colors we get. If you are watching this video and you're down in Florida or New Orleans or Houston, really humid areas are perfect for getting really rich greens and rust colors and things like that. Whereas somebody in Arizona or Utah is not going to get those same colors just because of the dry climate. So if you are in those areas, you can always introduce humidity with a humidifier to help you get some of those more natural greens and blues and things just from extra moisture in the air. So we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to come back with our little accents and call it done. Okay, so we've allowed our clear guard to dry on our piece, and now I'm ready to use some leftover of the copper B to get that finish, to dry brush some of that on these edges. And for that, I want to make sure that I just grab just the smallest amount of that copper B. And I'm using a really cheap brush to do this, but it'll get the job done here. So I'm just going to hit these edges. Again, we just want a minimal amount here. And I'm doing this where anywhere it would logically scuff and expose that metal. Obviously right here where it's flat, unless it makes sense to do that, there's no point in that. Typically the edges are where you're going to have that effect. So and again, the beauty of this process is the metal coating is inexpensive. So if we've got areas where we colored outside the lines, we didn't get exactly what we wanted, very easy to retouch an area by putting more the copper B metal coating on, put more patina on that, let that react, seal it again, do the whole thing. So other than time, this is relatively inexpensive to do. Okay, so here's our finished piece with our copper accents where we've cheated that look of seeing scuffed copper through those edges by just going back and dry brushing that on. So that's a great technique for giving that look of something that's been heavily oxidized, but still cheat that look of seeing some raw metal peeking through. So there you have that. It's at this point we have a sealer all over all the oxidized part of the planter. If we want, we could follow up with some more of the clear guard matte all over the whole thing, but I like it as it is. I'm going to leave it alone. As it is, that copper B will be fine by itself. So I'm going to stop now, but if we want, we could also follow up with some copper, with some of the clear guard satin if we wanted to give this more of a semi-gloss look. But that will do for now. I'm going to stop and I'll leave it alone. And be sure to check out the end of this. I'm going to post a couple of video links to one of our other blue-green patinas, as well as a spray patina video, a spray-on metal coating application. Because if you're doing this, you want a really smooth finish. That's the way to do it with a HVLP sprayer. And last but not least, I'll put all of the links to the products we use in the video description. So be sure to check those out. And just some quick digital housekeeping. Make sure you like and subscribe and click the bell icon so you can get notified when we create new content. And of course, thanks again for watching.